Benjamin Franklin moved to Philadelphia as a young man, and he noticed the city was ill-prepared for fires. So he worked with various groups in the city to implement a series of basic preventative measures. That, alongside the creation of a volunteer-led firefighting team, greatly improved fire safety standards across the city. He wrote about this in a letter to the paper, saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This story is recounted on a website run by the Independence Hall Association. Today, our greatest threat isn't fires, it's chronic illness. A CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, report claims that up to 40% of annual deaths from each of the 5 U.S. leading causes are preventable. A lot of the current healthcare debate stems around how best to treat illness in our country. But what this misses is the important role prevention can play. We can contrast prevention and treatment in important ways. Treatment of illness typically includes things like doctor visits, medications, hospitalizations, and surgery, and this has been the focus of our healthcare system. Whereas preventative measures include things like exercise, nutrition, not smoking, and reducing your exposure to environmental pollutants. Of these, prevention must be emphasized and prioritized. I'll demonstrate how prevention is better than the treatment of illness in 3 key ways, in terms of the economic costs, the health outcomes, and the political practicality. In all, prevention is better than treatment. So first, let's look at how much we spend on health in our country. The government spends a lot of money on our health. The CBO, or the Congressional Budget Office, showed that in 2016, our government spent over $950 billion on healthcare between Medicare and Medicaid alone. This is more than we spent on anything else, and this drastically increases the national deficit, which reduces our ability to pay off our debts and invest in things like infrastructure and education. A study in The Lancet showed that we pay excessively for healthcare at over $9,000 per person, and costs are only expected to increase through the coming decades. A lot of these costs go towards chronic conditions. A CDC report called the Chronic Disease Overview showed that up to about 86% of healthcare costs are associated with chronic conditions. The report continues, claiming that chronic conditions such as heart disease, stroke, cancer, type 2 diabetes, and arthritis are among the most common, costly, and preventable of all health problems. So we pay far too much to treat illness in our country. Prevention also offers better costs and better health outcomes. So some of the downsides with our current medical model are that about half of Americans are living with 1 or more chronic conditions, according to the same CDC report I had previously mentioned. The National Alliance of Caregiving estimates that 16% of Americans are currently providing care for another adult with some kind of illness. McCary and Daniel, researchers from Johns Hopkins Medicine, project that 250,000 deaths occur annually from medical error, which would make it the 3rd leading cause of death in our country. A lot of this harm is preventable. A German study of over 23,000 participants showed that healthy habits can lower the risk of developing a chronic condition by 78%. These healthy habits were healthy eating, exercising, not smoking, and maintaining a healthy body mass index. The Morbidity and Mortality Weekly report from the CDC showed that in 2010, 200,000 deaths from heart disease and stroke were preventable. So a lot of suffering in our country is not necessary. Prevention is a better approach. It's also more practical. Health in America is one of the most divisive political issues. So, most recently, the major legislation to pass was the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, which became the law in 2010 when Democrats held power. Since then, the Republican-led Congress has made over 60 attempts to make some changes or repeal to this law, according to Cowan and Cornwell of Reuters. Prevention has a wider appeal. For the right, it appeals to their value of limited government intervention and personal responsibility. And for the left, prevention offers the most compassionate approach to improving our state of health. Prevention should be seen as our patriotic duty. A healthier population contributes more and requires less resources, and this can be advocated without policy. It can be done through advocacy and through public service announcements, where our politicians, media, and communities could work together towards promoting preventative measures. Prevention is the most pragmatic approach. I'm not calling for an end to medical treatment. Medical services provide important and necessary care for many illnesses or accidents that occur that may not be preventable. But prevention must be prioritized and emphasized whenever possible. In all, prevention is the best medicine. I've shown how this is true because of its lower costs, its better health outcomes, and its wider political appeal. Going back to my opener, when a fire breaks out, it's important we do everything we can to respond and to take action. But it's more important that we do more to prevent these from happening in the first place. And the same is true of the state of health in our country. I propose we follow Benjamin Franklin's lead and remember that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.